Hi, this is Patrick with Trusty Huckster Mercantile. I'm sharing this video for the first time after quite some time. I haven't posted a video in a while, and that is not for lack of trying. I actually did film an entire haul video on serving China, and as I was editing it, I didn't like it. So it never got posted. It may someday, but for now, the site has been relatively quiet. I've been spending most of the quarantine trying to get some things posted. Luckily, I guess, I had quite a haul that I had purchased before the shutdown and just never listed, never photographed, never really did anything. So it's kind of like Christmas Day. I'm opening boxes that I completely forgot what I had bought. So I've always thought about doing more of a haul video, but the way I process things to go online, it didn't really work that well. So when I saw that this challenge was put out by George at the Antique Nomad, I thought it was kind of a fun idea. Watched a couple of the videos this morning, admittedly coming a little late to the party since everything was supposed to be turned in yesterday, but that's not new for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway. So the idea behind this, as I understand it, is to kind of show off your bunker, the Show Off Your Bunker Challenge, and just to show what we're all doing kind of stuck in our homes and how we're filling our times, and then also kind of showcasing some collections that have been built, that we've built up while we have been doing thrifting. A little bit of a precursor to the tour. I only opened my Etsy store in October of 2019, so I've only been open 6-7 months. So I am relatively new to thrifting, and so I'll kind of point out as I go through, show you my place, that some of these collections have been built up just in the time I've started doing the resale business on Etsy. And so some of them I built up with speed. Others, like the collection behind me, has been curated over time because I've had that long before I started reselling. So let me go ahead and start the tour. Having watched several of the videos already today from the Show Off Your Bunker Challenge, I actually like the ones that were showing off the actual bunker, showing off the living spaces, and also showing the collections, so I'm going to do that. So when you first enter my home, the first thing you would see, well, besides a temporary addition of a box currently quarantining because I do still like shopping online, is a photograph of my now adult daughter. She was less than thrilled to discover that per Etsy rules, she is now considered vintage, having been born in 1999. I live in a townhouse and happens to be an end unit, which means I get 2 windows. Had to close them because when I started the video, there was too much light coming through and it was hard to actually see anything else in the room. But the first thing you would actually see coming into my place would be this framed needlepoint. If anyone has followed my Facebook or Instagram stories, or even my YouTube channel previously, you might know that the history behind Trusty Huckster Mercantile is I have and continue to do props and set dressing for local community theater. And I started the Etsy store actually reselling things that I had sourced for productions, simply because I didn't have the room. And this happens to be a needlepoint that I picked up at a garage sale for $1. It was already framed in this great frame. It's dated on the back 1972, and it last graced the stage of North Riverside Players' production of The Man Who Came to Dinner. And I really liked it and discovered, once I brought it down from the wall and brought it back to my place, that I had this gap on this wall, and it looked perfect there with the burgundy color. And so it got hung there. I don't know if it'll stay there, but for starters, I like the way it looked. The next collection, hopefully it was looking nice with some sun shining through it. This entire collection has been built since, not only since I started reselling in October, but actually a couple months into it, because as I was stalking people on Instagram, I started finding images of people's swung glass collection, which up until that time, I didn't even really know what swung glass was. I'd seen, examples of some of this, but just didn't know what it was called. And some of the images showed collections like these lined up, in some cases color coordinated, and they just looked beautiful. And I had this large window, so I started building this collection. So some of these are actually thrifted from Goodwill, Savers, things like that. But a number of them I picked up at specifically for myself, either at antique shops, other higher end thrift stores. So not necessarily, in a couple cases paying just a few bucks, in other cases paying a little bit more. The really large one On the end, it's harder to see, it's the pale yellow. That one was a Facebook Marketplace purchase that I actually drove up to Milwaukee to pick that up for 20 bucks. I thought that was worth 20 plus the tolls and the gas to add that to my collection. So that entire collection is all new. I admittedly do not know details of a lot of them. It's something that I haven't really researched. I'm not reselling them. Anyone who watches my videos knows I do try and do as much research as I can before I list them, but since they're not listed, I don't have the research. Coming around the room, one of my favorite pieces is this item. It is, as you can see, the side of a theater seat. I work in community theater, volunteer. It's not my main job, but I do set design and props. But I also am an actor, so I do like all the theater related stuff. So I found that in a local a local vintage store. I think I paid $40 for that. And then I was at the Kane County Flea Market and saw a guy who was doing these types of industrial lamps, repurposing a bunch of things. So I showed him the seat side, and he designed the little platform to go on it. It already had the underlight, the aisle light, so he reactivated that, put a light bulb in there, and then he came up with the idea of a stage theater spotlight and created the little rigging for that. And so that is kind of like my regular, every time I turn the light switch, that comes on too. So it's kind of like general lighting since this room has pretty high ceilings. Another piece that would be considered vintage, metal sculpture, whatever, that I picked that up in 1989. When I traveled during college, we went to the Soviet Union. That was picked up in Leningrad. That is Peter the Great on his horse. So technically that is vintage as well, but it's just something that I picked up and I like as a memory of that trip. This bookcase is kind of developed slowly over time. It's a bookcase that initially had pieces of glass in it, depression glass, carnival glass, which I kind of like, but was never a huge fan of. It just, it's nice to display, and against the black, it looked kind of nice. And then it was this piece here. One of the theaters that I work with had basically been cited by the fire marshal that they had too much in their storage area. So they were thinning out what they had, and they were throwing that away. And so I took that, and it kind of literally, it started this collection. So that was the first one that I picked up. And then over time, that might have been the second one, or that might have been the second one. I have a feeling that one, because it's relatively lame and simple and boring, that was probably the second one that I picked up. And then I started finding these other ones, this field telephone. This is my most recent purchase. This is actually designed to be a wall mount. You can see this large ringer. It's got the little handle on the side. It's a cool collection. It's unfortunate that the entire case is black and all the phones are black. So I've thought about either painting it or putting mirrors on the back or something so that they stand out a little bit more. But when you're in the room, you can see it. This item is a piece of Hager that I had originally purchased to resell. Realized it was going to be a pain to try and ship it, and I liked the colors, and so it was something that basically became a permanent member of this collection because it fit perfectly on this little table. The vase at the bottom probably is considered vintage. Oh yeah, because I think that was picked up in the 90s. I used to have a larger pottery collection before I moved, and that is one that I retained because it's just kind of got these cool imprints of the florals on the side. It's a studio piece, not a production piece. Coming across, you can see all the books on the bottom. I got some pricing guides, some things that I've picked up over time, some history books. This is my newest one. My daughter had been doing her study abroad in Germany, and when I went to visit her at Christmas time, we spent 2 weeks in Austria, and I discovered Lillian porcelain and fell in love with it. So she found this book, which unfortunately is all in German. So she's having to help me translate as we go. But I was not familiar with Lillian porcelain, and what I saw there and what I've seen since, I absolutely love it. I did find a piece that I'll resell. Don't find it too often around here. but it's something I'm trying to do some research on the dating and things like that. So that book has become my new best friend. As I mentioned, I do theater. I was actually supposed to be directing a production of Anti-Mame that would have opened at the end of April, but with the lockdown, that is not happening. Backing up a little bit, got the centerpiece table, centerpiece glass. This is a piece of Gartner and Blade, probably from the 90s, maybe early 2000s. Was when I was really building my contemporary art glass collection. It's one of my favorite pieces because this glass design around the edges looks so much like wood grain. I think it's fascinating. It's a pretty heavy piece, and it's pretty much always taken pride of place in the middle of this great table. And masks that my daughter made so that we have them locally. Coming up above the chair, we can get the zoom again, some additional art, some additional glass pieces that I also have been building up more recently. The swung glass bowls separated over here away from the vases. We'll see if that collection continues to build, because what I fell in love with are the flower frogs. I never knew such a thing existed until I found one. And then it's like, okay, this is my next new collection. So it's growing slowly because they don't come up that often, certainly in thrift stores, but even in local vintage and antique stores, I don't really see them that often. The seagull was the first one that I picked up, and I've seen him quite a bit since. He's probably also one of the least expensive ones. You can probably usually pick him up, definitely under 50. I think I paid 20 for him. And then I had found the clear draped girl. A lot of people call that one Bashful Charlotte. Bashful Charlotte actually doesn't have any drapery or towel at all. She's kind of hunched over. So this is the draped girl. So I got the clear one. Again, probably wasn't too expensive, but it was probably more along the $50 to $70 mark. And then just recently, right before the shutdown, the 20s, 30s, 40s Glass Society of Illinois had their big show, and I picked up all three of these pieces. The big heron in the middle, which I don't know how easily you can see that, which I really liked. And then the two kids, the kid holding the kid goat, and then another draped girl. Even though it was the same as the clear, I liked the fact that it popped out in blue. So hopefully I'll continue building that collection. I did actually pick one more piece up, and that comes over here to this little tower. So you gotta skip the Jack in the Pulpit for a second. Because I also picked up this piece, which I really liked. I wanted something other than a human figure, and I saw this fish figure, but it was the entire console bowl. And I initially had purchased it knowing I didn't have space for the bowl, but I had anticipated that the frog, which does lift out of it, that would actually go up and sit on the shelf alongside everyone else. Unfortunately, the ledge is very shallow, and it technically fit. The base did fit on it, so it would have been there safely, but it the edge of the flower frog itself overhung, and it kind of looked silly. So I reorganized some of my other glass that had been on this tower and found a place for them here. So I've got another piece of modern glass, Jack in the Pulpit style. This is my only Latin vase, and it's not the typical Latin, and that's actually kind of why I liked it, because I'm not a huge fan of Latin glass with the floral designs, but this one I really, really liked. Very modern looking, almost too modern for this room. It looked really good in my old office, which used to all be black and gray. But it looks great here too. And then that's actually a modern piece that was probably like from Target or something. That's right now just filling space until I find something nicer. Then coming over here, this collection has been built up over time. Again, some modern art glass pieces are in here that I've had that for 20, 30 years or so. This is a little fun piece that I really like. It's a secessionist piece. So it's Viennese from around 1900, 1910. And I really liked the design, and I really wanted to expand on that style. It's extremely expensive. The bowl was expensive enough. I probably bought it 20 years ago, and I think it was probably about $500 at that time. I'm sure it's not nearly worth that anymore. But it's a difficult collection to build here in the United States because just not that many people have it, or they're not familiar with it. I used to have a bigger collection of Roseville, and it kind of looked nice with that, but I liked this better. So I started when I moved, when I got divorced and moved into this place, I had to pare down quite a bit. And so I got rid of all my Roseville and a lot of my regular pottery, but I kept him and, really like it. Some more art glass. These are some pieces that, actually that bottom one I thrifted for $1, and I just really liked it. It's actually a vase, but I thought it was cool. It's turned on its side that I could use it to hold another piece. The dragonfly is actually a piece of Reiku pottery that my daughter and I made at a local arts studio. They usually have a summer fair, and you can make your own Reiku. So I've got a couple pieces, but I like the dragonflies on display. That little vase was also thrifted. My daughter was with me one time, and she really liked it. It was $1, so we added it, and we just kept it in my collection. The burgundy, this was from a arts and crafts fair probably about 20 years ago. It's from a local potter, matching vase and the plate. The plaque in the back was a gift from my daughter for Christmas last year. The mug was a gift from my daughter, I think, for Christmas the year before. The blue was something I picked up at an antique store long ago, long before I was reselling. Not really sure whose it is. It's dated 1995, so it's an artist, but you can see it's kind of incised to make those trees, and it looks very cool. But I don't know what that style is considered, but I've always liked the looks of it. And then over here, some more pottery. Piece of Stone Crow pottery. It's a commemorative piece from their anniversary in 1999, 25-year anniversary. The leaf impressed vase was actually a gift from our realtor when we bought our house in Maryland. She made it herself. That would have been in 2003, so not quite to the vintage range. Another piece I thrifted for like $1, and I just thought it looked good there. The green pottery was another case of a local arts and crafts fair, probably 20, 30 years ago. This blue piece is a Gail Pritchard flower frog. I picked that up to resell really early on, not understanding the rules on Etsy, having everything had to be at least 20 years old. This piece I do not believe is 20 years old, but it's a beautiful piece anyway, and I'm not sure it's going to stay in that location, but I did decide not to list it, and I just wanted to keep it because I just really liked maybe rebuild some of the pottery collection I got rid of. This was a Reiku piece that I did not make. I thrifted that. It was like $2, and it was a nice big piece that I really liked. And then that is from I think it was a North Carolina. No, I don't remember. I picked that up from another studio pottery. There's a little bit more production pottery, and had the dog. And now I want to think that might be from Detroit. So, and I'm too lazy to open the cabinet to show you. This collection this has been built up over time. The piano was built in 1920, so it is its 100th anniversary. I turned 50 this year. It turns 100, and I said I'd rather celebrate my piano's 100th than my 50th. So it is a vertical grand, so it has amazing sound. I do feel sorry because that wall is the shared wall with the next townhouse unit, so I probably need to invest in some sound baffles behind it. But anyway, I picked this up when we moved into our last house in 2005, I believe, 2004, 2005. I bought this specifically for our living room, and from that point I started this collection. These bookcases were bought to go on either side of it, so when I moved I basically recreated it. The collection probably won't grow in size at all, but it's going to grow in quality because in some cases I was picking things up just to fill spaces. Like that piece I probably paid like $10 for. I think it's worth more than $10, but it's not worth much more than $10. It's a unmarked, unstamped, not even sure in its true age. It is a different type of shape, but it's not the kind of collection I'm trying to build. I've got a big spot for a photo of my daughter. This was taken obviously when she was very little. I can't remember where that was. I think San Antonio. So I've got a couple of different collections. I've got some pewter that I built up. Couple of small pieces of pottery that are much more contemporary that'll eventually get replaced as I find some of the bigger pieces and some of the 19th century stoneware. This piece I picked up at the Chicago Merchandise Mart fair. No, I think it was the Merchandise Mart Antiques Fair probably 10, 15 years ago. It's probably, well, no, it definitely is the most I've paid for any of these pieces. I'm sure it's not worth anywhere what I paid for it at the time. I got it from Old Hope Antiques. There's a piece of paper in there that talks a little bit more about it. The rest of these are typically picked up at flea markets, maybe some antique stores, and I don't think I've paid more than a couple $100 for any of them. And just recently picked up this piece here. What used to be here was another kind of boring piece of stoneware. I think a red wing pottery, more modern one. So I took that out and replaced it with this. So that's kind of what I like to do with some of my collections, is instead of necessarily going for quantity, trying to improve the quality. At some point, replace these are obviously reproduction cheese boxes, storage boxes. They make nice risers, but there's no age. So at some point things will get replaced. Some pieces of pewter. Picked up that Delft tile, was picked up at a thrift store for $1. This is a more modern stoneware piece, and it has some decent value to it, but it's just that's not the style I want to continue building up. And again, some more pewter. My daughter goes to Dickinson College, so she had picked that up for me when she started there as a Christmas gift. Going into the kitchen, the pride of place in the kitchen right now is actually something I need to ship. I got an order from Etsy overnight of this massive platter. I did not have a box large enough, so luckily the priority mail boxes, the big boxes, come in a big box, and it's going to be big enough to hold this big platter. So very excited about that. So that's kind of in the way right now. But I do have some things that I have in the kitchen. The real only collection is my tea canister collection that I started, again, within the last few months, and really enjoyed building it. Probably won't get much bigger until I decide eventually what's going to happen with it. I'd like to do something to the kitchen, and that might, they might get displayed up above. I'm considering making like a little one cabinet would just be for tea, and maybe have these on display above it. So we'll see what happens over time. From a personal vintage, you can kind of see I do have what technically would be considered vintage, because this Fiesta pattern was purchased as our wedding china in the 90s, and so it's lasted longer than the marriage. But so I still have some pieces of Fiesta that are in there. I use these all the time. I can't remember what the pattern is called, but I really like those. I have those for, like, I make my toast, I put them on there. I used to build this collection, sorry if I was really loud, of this Hazel Atlas Smoke and Sip collection. And it's the usable surface area is a little bit smaller because you've got the place for the, not only for the mug, but for the ashtray as well. So I still have it. I've got the I think it's called Boopy Glass that goes along with it. Or it doesn't go along with it. I think it matches it. So I use that for, like, ranch dressing or, things like that. I've had these BC bowls forever. My grandmother actually got these. I think they were given from a gas station or something in the 60s or 70s. So that collection, I've replaced it a few times, but that is something I've had since I was a kid. Down here, not particularly useful, but this is a collection that I started building up. Red Wing Bob White serving pieces and dishes. I had a Christmas party and I pulled out all that stuff and used that for the Christmas party, which was kind of fun. And over here, I started a collection. I really like this Hazel Atlas crisscross refrigerator dishes. So I've got those, and this is also where I keep my scale and stuff for shipping. Because as you'll see as I continue this little tour, I don't really have a shipping station. What I do is I've got in our utility room here, got a place where I keep some paper. I've got the light box that I'll use when I take photographs of my smalls. But in general, it is a side hustle for me. So what I've got, what I'm doing is this is not my main level of income. And so I don't tend to get more. I'm not even averaging, particularly right now, I am not even averaging an order a day. So I have luxury that I can come out here. This is where everything's stored. So after I photograph it, it gets wrapped up just like that big platter was, gets numbered, and then put in one of these bins. There's also some bins upstairs in my office that I'll show. So when something sells, I can come out here, grab it out of one of the bins, come over here, grab the boxes, grab the right box. The big piles of bubble wrap, which admittedly they're very useful, but shoving 4 of those in my Hyundai Sonata was, I was like a clown car. So some things have to be rethought. This corner, as I've been cleaning and purging, some of this stuff will eventually go to my antique showcase at an antique mall that's currently closed. But a lot of this is going to go to Goodwill because Goodwill is currently closed. I've got no place to take it, so it's just taking up room in my garage. But it's either things that I bought really early on, maybe paid too much for, there's not much of a market, or there's tons of it already listed. It'll be too heavy to ship. If it's not old enough, it can't go into my antique. The antique mall everything has to be pre-1979, so I'm somewhat limited. So all of that stuff. See anything you want, you can get it pretty much cheap. Probably just pay me for the shipping, and I'd be happy to get rid of all of this. But that is what is in my garage. Finishing up on the first floor, peek into my little powder room here, because I actually have a pretty big collection. This was started at the time my daughter, when she was very little, I used to go with me to flea markets, antique shops, things when I was just sourcing for myself, again, not for resale. And I decided that we should find something that was small and inexpensive that she could look for to keep her engaged. And this collection of buttons really took off. And we've got some fun stuff in here. We've got some autographs. Sorry, the light's reflecting there. Herbert Hoover's autograph. We've got tickets to they happen to be the Republican National Convention, but this is mixed. There's Democrats, there's Republicans. I think there's a Ross Perot's in here somewhere. Emperor, we trust. So we're politically agnostic in our display. They got a flasher there for the USA, LBJ for the USA. Hope you can see that. So there's just some cool stuff in here to entertain people that come to use our powder room. Another piece that I wanted to kind of go along with the buttons, I found this plate, which I've found in multiple versions and in multiple colorways. Which I found interesting, but just thought it looked nice to kind of fill out. I've also got 2 plaques, which haven't been hung yet. Okay, gotta maybe embarrass myself when I open this. But these pieces here, I have to fix their strings, the way they're hung. But these are, can't remember what they're called. Kuroko Craft, Coro Craft, I think, which I was not familiar with, but they have an entire series of all these different designs, and so I got the one for the White House and Mount Vernon, which I thought were kind of cool, and they will end up being hung, here above the light switch, this little wall here. So maybe that'll be a project I can work on in the downtime. And then the only other thing on the first floor, again, a collection that was built up over time. As I mentioned, I was trying to find things for my daughter to buy. At one point, we were buying salt dips, salt cellars. And that became really weird for like a little 8-year-old girl to be buying salt cellars. So we started the button collection instead. But we found some cool salt cellars. And then basically what it turned into was I had this cabinet, which I absolutely love. It's not reproduction, it's Walter E. Smith. That just looks really nice. It's a lighted cabinet. Secretary, all my bills and stuff are in that. But with these glass shelves, we just kind of built it up over time. And in some cases, I've continued to purchase things. That piece there is Our Garden, Augarden. It is Austrian. Picked it up when I was there at Christmas time. It's a little box that looks just like a roll. Some butter pats. That I think that butter pat's one of the newer ones that I picked up at the flea market right before the shutdown. Some coasters. That's a Lufthansa coaster for first class. That one and that one were all part of a series. I picked those up at Bananas Mobilia in Vienna when I was with my daughter. Something to bring back. That Murano glass horse my daughter had just brought back. She had gone to Venice during while she was in Germany, while she's on her study abroad. She brought that back to me as a gift. That salt cellar with a little spoon, I believe is a marriage. I don't think the ram's head is actually supposed to sit in that cellar holder, but I think it still looks cool that way, and it's how I bought it. That was actually purchased at a flea market in Vienna, Austria, and I think we ended up paying like €2 for that. I thought it was pretty cool. And then, yes, I know they're cigarette holders, but I still think they're cool. I've always been a fan of smalls, and also very much a fan of porcelain. So I just think those cigarette holders are very cool, and at this point I'm just putting them all on display. So that's pretty much all of my collections on the first floor. As you go up the stairs to my second floor, first thing you come across is this photograph. I picked this up, actually would have been in around 2000, but it is dated 1989. It's first in a series of 200 by this photographer. Picked this up at a arts and crafts fair in Barrington, which is where we lived at that time when my daughter was born. So I know that we used to make a tradition of going there every year for Father's Day. So it was definitely after 1999, but the piece itself is technically vintage since it's dated 89. There's some more glass as you work your way upstairs. One of the things that I've got is this large piece in the middle. Was picked up when we did a cruise of the Baltic in 2006, I believe. And that is actually from Stockholm, Sweden. It's probably my favorite piece. It's also probably one of my most expensive pieces. And then they shipped it, so I didn't have to carry it back. But that was picked up overseas, and this little paperweight was picked up in Estonia. The other pieces were just picked up over time. Again, none of these were thrifted. These were all things that I built specifically for the collection. Again, not vintage, but themed vintage. This was a quilt that my ex-wife made me at a time when she was not my ex-wife. It was a Father's Day gift from her and my daughter, and it is Rocky and Bullwinkle and Boris and Natasha, which it used to be my man cave, which I don't really have now. I guess my entire place is a man cave. But I still hang it on the wall because I think it looks kind of cool. And then for anyone who was thinking, oh my God, he can't be that clean, welcome to my second floor. This is where a lot of the actual reselling storage is going on. So these are all pieces that I've yet to photograph, have yet to list. This block print was something that I picked up it was literally in a moldy frame, and it had water on the mat. So I ripped it out so it didn't damage the piece anymore. And I'm probably going to damage it because now that it's not protected, I keep putting things on it. But I hope at some point, hopefully I'll be listed. I've got a whole series of stock certificates. I used to work for a company that sold locomotive equipment. So I have all these old stock certificates that used to hang in my office, and now I have no reason to display them. So they're going to be resold. Some glass, some other pieces that need to get resold. The lights for when I do bigger pieces, which that's why all these are up here. I've done most of the smalls in the light box. These are getting too big to do well in the light box. Some storage stuff there. And then as you come across, this is one of my newest pieces of furniture. Picked this up probably 2 months ago or so. I'd been looking for something that would fit nicely here at the spittoon that I picked up to thrift. I haven't listed it yet. I kind of liked it looking there. And inadvertently, what this became was I suddenly had this whole extra place to display, and I didn't really have any other collections to display. So almost everything in here, except for my daughter's photograph, everything in the display side, these are all listed online, and I just didn't put them away. They're all tagged. If you look, like you can see, there's a piece of tape on the back of that pewter statue. There's a piece of masking tape which has her part number on there. So it's just something, and I actually just had the experience earlier this week selling one of the first items out of here, and it was another left-in pedestal-footed plate that was in that exact location. I knew I had this one, and I found that one wrapped up, and it happened to be 2 digits off of the other. So I'm like, oh God, did I make a mistake? Did I put the wrong part number on it? And then I remembered, why can't I find it? And I remembered, oh, it was sitting in here. So I pulled it out and then put the other one on display here. That box has not been listed yet because I'm concerned about the shipping on it. But I picked it up at an estate sale, and it's Richard Hudnut Salon on New York City. There are examples of these that sold. It's like a display box, it's a wooden box with a hinged lid. And then these are some Bavarian porcelain pieces that I picked up and are listed. This is a silver overlay green glass dish, and you can see there's a piece of masking tape sticking out, which means it is up for sale. At the top, actually the earth wrap piece of Hager and the two, what are they called? The potato diggers, or I can't remember what, I think they're potato diggers. Those technically are sold. They're in an inadvertent layaway program where the woman who bought them couldn't afford to pay them for me at the time. She gave me a deposit, and I'm waiting for the rest of the payment to be able to ship them. And until I ship them, I was concerned they'd get damaged, so they're up on display. And that happens to be another vintage piece. It's dated 1970 from Roy McAdams, pencil sketch of Weaver Chapel at Wittenberg University, which is where I graduated. This was a display that I used to have in my man cave. I used to have, I think, 4 or 6 of those clue boards, and then maybe 8 of the different framed cards, one of each character, and then the card design itself. And so when I moved here, I had a smaller wall, and I just ended up putting these. I don't even think these are the oldest ones. They're just the ones that I liked the colors and some of the art. And the middle one is the Scooby-Doo clue board, which I'm sorry, I had to put that up there. And that is on my way into what should be my office, but what it's going to be is the room that makes everyone feel better about themselves, because this is, well, everything else. So what's sitting on the floor is a mishmash of items that have been sourced, and none of this has been listed, none of this has been photographed. A couple pieces have been tagged. I tried to sell them on a Facebook, Instagram sales or Facebook group sales. I don't do Facebook Marketplace to sell yet. That might change. So a couple pieces, these have just not made their way onto Etsy. So these are barely even organized. There's like this little basket kind of just small stuff. My Luray teacups and saucers have tipped over. My Victory Bond china, which is kind of cool, stacked up. Some pieces are too modern for Etsy. So it's just a kind of a mixed match that at some point needs to be cleared out. But as you move your way around, you'll find the milk crates. These used to be in the garage. I moved them into here to make more room in the garage for 2 cars. But these are where a lot of the smaller versions of everything is stored. So again, everything is wrapped, everything is labeled. This happens to be DG, which means these are all dog figurines. I've got another one right underneath it, which is the Fs, which is figurines. I've got an NTK, that's Noritake. As you go through, some of these are more full than others depending on their categories. So again, this hopefully makes you all feel better about anything. If you were feeling like I was trying to, one-up you or something and having really organized life, yeah, this is all hidden behind a door. And, it started as my office, kind of a theater room. Here are different scripts. These are not all shows I have done, but, these are a lot of shows that I've read. Posters, theater posters from shows. These are shows that I've all been in. These are all ones that I've been in. She Loves Me, that's a window card from a Broadway production. I was in a local theater production of it, but I did pick that up on a trip to New York. So it started, trying to, those didn't even get hung. They're sitting on the back of a sofa. Did hang some pictures up here. And then I do have a little ledge of some oddball vintage / theater stuff. My Droopy figurine, I'm so happy. There's my BC cookie jar that matches the plates from downstairs. That is the Travelocity gnome, which was actually a cake topper for one of my daughter's birthdays when she was like 6 or 7. We did a Amazing Race theme birthday party. That's another piece of Reiku. Back there is a Silent Butler, brass Silent Butler 2-piece that I purchased. That was one of the first props I ever purchased for the second production I was ever in. They needed a silent butler, and I found that, and I can't resell it. So I just put it up on display, even though you can barely see it. So that is what's in my office. So thank you for joining me in while I show off your bunker. Thanks to George from the Antique Nomad for running this kind of challenge. I kind of actually caught myself off guard as I opened some of the cabinets and started trying to come up with some of the backstories of where all of these things came from, even some of the newer pieces. It was kind of fun to be able to go through those and remember some of the history, particularly the things that I got with my daughter. So I hope you enjoyed it. Probably ran a little bit longer than ideal, but I'm a talker. So thanks for joining me. Again, this is Patrick with Trusty Huckster Mercantile. You can find me on Etsy, Instagram, and Facebook at TH Mercantile, as well as YouTube. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and I will try and get some more regular posts in the near future. Thank you so much.